Here we are again. I found another way I might be able to dial in the gas system on my Steyr AUG for suppressed use. In my previous 2 videos on this rifle, which I will link in the description, I showed the suppressor use gas plug, compared it to the factory gas plug, and ran the rifle suppressed. I recommend checking out the in-depth comparison of the 2 gas plugs where I explain their port sizing and how they operate. A quick recap as it pertains to what I will be presenting in this video. First, the gas regulator plug changes how much gas acts on the short stroke piston system by bleeding more or less gas off out of this port right here. It does not control how much gas comes into the regulator body. All the gas settings on both regulator plugs have the same inlet port diameter from the barrel. Second, I found the suppressor setting of this suppressor use gas plug was overgassing my rifle. It would still cycle my lightest 55 grain PMC 223 ammo without the suppressor on the suppressor setting. So I started looking closer at the gas regulator body and the regulator plug in an attempt to understand why it was still overgassed. What I found is that the bleed port in the regulator body right here is smaller diameter than the bleed port of the plug inside of the regulator body. That means the hole in the regulator body is controlling how much gets bled off in the suppressed setting and not the gas plug itself. The gas regulator body is not bleeding enough gas off because the diameter of this hole is too small. That's why it's still overgassed. This port right here in the regulator housing is 95 thousandths in diameter, and the hole in the gas plug is 112 thousandths. This means the suppressor gas plug has the ability to bleed off roughly 28% more gas than the regulator housing based on the cross-sectional area of these bleed ports. You can see when I turn the gas regulator plug to the normal or unsuppressed setting 1, the gas plug hole is visible within the regulator body hole. That's because it's smaller diameter. When I have the gas plug turned to the suppressed setting, you cannot see the edge of the gas plug bleed hole within the regulator body bleed hole, and that is because the gas plug bleed hole is bigger than the hole in this regulator body. My idea is to open up this hole in the regulator housing until it performs like I want when suppressed. I want to sneak up on this and increase the hole diameter a little bit at a time and make sure it still functions with my lightest ammo in the suppressor at each step. If the port in the plug itself is too big and bleeds too much gas off for my rifle to function with the suppressor and the lightest ammo, that means I need to rely on the size of this port in the regulator housing to control the gas bleed off. My hope is that I can drill the regulator housing port out to the same diameter as the gas plug port, about 112 thousandths. I also hope this will significantly reduce recoil and gas back in my face. This sounds sketchy as hell at first, but it's a pretty low risk operation because if I go too big on the gas regulator housing hole, I can still run the gas system on the normal setting where the gas bleed off is controlled by the smaller hole in the plug within this housing. I could then drill out the adverse position on my factory gas plug to the size that I want it to be for suppressed use. So let's check out the process of me doing this modification and testing it at the shooting range. Got my drill bits laid out from smallest up to biggest after confirming the sizes with my calipers. 96. I suppose I could go in bigger steps because this isn't really going to affect it, but I like to, sneak up on it. That's taking entirely too fucking long. Here's that first 96 thousandth step, 3 rounds, suppressed setting. .98 thousandths. Forgot to bring Q-tips with me like an idiot. Just shooting it, I can still tell that's way too much gas at the 98 thousandths. Yeah, so we're gonna go up to 103. Well, something poopy happened. I got a direct thread suppressor now. Oh well, I can continue my testing. I'll deal with this when I fucking get home. Okay, so no more suppressor on the suppressed gas setting, 104 thousandths hole diameter right here. Still cycled fine, still got locked back. 108. I guess the smart way to do this is test it unsuppressed first. Test it unsuppressed first, and if it functions unsuppressed, it's obviously going to function suppressed. No suppressor on the suppressor setting. Hole is 108 thousandths. This will open up the hole to the same size as the bleed port and the regulator. I'm not going to go any bigger than this. It's going to run how it's going to run after I drill this out. I suppose I could drill both of these holes out to dial in the gas system further, but I'm not going to deal with that. Okay, still functions fine, so I know the suppressor's still going to be overgassed. But that's okay, I'm not going any bigger on that port. Okay, I'm back home. I got the suppressor off and my muzzle device reinstalled and torqued it properly this time. So once this housing port was drilled out to 112 thousandths, the same size as the plug port inside of it, I noticed a reduction in recoil and gas to my face when shooting suppressed. I wouldn't call it significant, but definitely noticeable. The rifle still cycled with 223 with the suppressor off using the suppressor gas setting, so I know it's still overgassed, and the suppressor gas setting in this plug clearly favors reliability over suppressed performance. I could drill out the suppressor setting gas plug port and the housing port larger to dial it in even more, but right now it's functioning great and it's not too unpleasant to shoot. I could have just drilled the port and the regulator body to the same size as the gas plug, but I think the way I went about it was a good idea, even though it took a little longer. Another consideration is noise. This rifle has a pretty good pop coming out of the regulator bleed port. Even with the hole drilled out to a larger diameter so it vents more gas, I didn't notice an appreciable difference in noise. It's just gonna kind of be a noisy rifle, suppressed no matter which way you slice it. It is odd to me that the hole in the regulator body was so much smaller than the hole in the suppressor gas plug. It seems outside the normal range one could expect in manufacturing variants. Possibly they designed and produced the suppressor use gas plug much after the original design of the regulator housing and never considered the port size or bothered to change it or took a second look at it. The suppressor use gas plug you buy from Steyr doesn't have an adverse position in it, even though there's room for it, which is stupid. Had I known what I know now, I would have just drilled out the bleed port of the adverse position on my factory regulator and saved myself $110. So to wrap this up, if you're looking to suppress your AUG, I would recommend modifying your factory gas plug. I would start with a 112 thousandths diameter bleed port for this setting and would drill it out larger from there if you want to reduce gas further. If you're not comfortable doing that, then buy the suppressor use gas plug. I would recommend measuring the bleed port diameter in this regulator housing and drilling it out to at least 112 thousandths, then going up from there to match your gas plug port size if you drill that out any bigger. I hope this was interesting and helpful. Thanks for watching.